Is this the Bengals team you thought you were going to see coming into the season?
Yes, and it's as simple as Joe Burrow's right calf. Picture Josh Allen being a statue, not taking a single step in any direction on any play. That's what Joe Burrow was for the first 4 games of the season.
Buffalo Plus, your interactive look at the week in football, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're getting ready for a huge game coming up on Sunday night, the Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. And who else to have with us other than the voice of the Cincinnati Bengals, Dan Hoard from Cincinnati, joining us. Dan, thanks for being on.
Mike, my pleasure. It's going to be a big night in the jungle on Sunday night.
All right, let's start with atmosphere in the game. And I got to ask you, we were all there in January. We talk a lot about how that game with Damar Hamlin impacted Bills players, Bills fans. It's been a different experience, obviously, for the Bengals, not dealing with it all year. How much do you think it's impacted the Bengals at all? And with the Bills coming in, whether Damar plays or not, is it anything for the Bengals?
I get the sense, Mike, that both teams are trying to downplay it this week. They don't want that emotional flashback if they can avoid it. Now, at some point during the game, whether Damar is active or not, they're going to show him on the video board, and the stadium is going to go bonkers, which will be great. It was traumatic for both teams that night, obviously, and it took a while for both teams to recover, even though they were able to, continue to play and play well, at least to a certain extent. The fact that Damar Hamlin made a full recovery and is going to be in uniform on Sunday night, and that many of the first responders, trainers, and doctors that helped save his life will undoubtedly be in attendance, I think is a wonderful cause for celebration. But I get the sense, at least from being in the Bengals locker room, that it's not something that they are eager to relive, because going forward, anytime there's one of those situations where there's a player down on the field and it's bad, I think everybody that was in uniform that night does a little bit of a flashback.
All right, so let's get to the game then. Let's talk about the way the Bengals are playing right now coming into this one. Obviously a rough start, but they've looked good. Is this the Bengals team you thought you were going to see coming into the season?
Yes, and it's as simple as Joe Burrow's right calf. Picture Josh Allen being a statue, not taking a single step in any direction on any play. That's what Joe Burrow was for the first 4 games of the season. He was the Statue of Liberty. He was a sitting target. And it's not like he's Lamar Jackson and sprinting around and rushing for 100 yards, but even something as simple as a step forward in the pocket, a couple of steps left or right to extend a play. That's what he's been able to do in the last 3 games. And the Bengals have won all 3. So there was no mystery for why they started 0-2 and 1-3. Joe Burrow was a shadow of what we've become accustomed to seeing over the last couple of years. And now that he's healthy and able to move around, the Bengals are one of the best teams in the NFL.
I've always thought of the Bengals as Jamar Chase being the great player, but Higgins being right there with him as a 1A. It's really been 1-1-1, hasn't it been? I mean, he's been incredible so far.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is on a pace to set the Bengals all-time record for catches in a season, and he would break the old record by about 30. So that's the kind of year that he's having. But in T. Higgins' case, there's another instance where it's injury-related. He broke his rib. He's been playing with a broken rib for the last several weeks. It's getting healthier. The Bengals had their bye week 2 weeks ago, so they had a week for a lot of their guys to rest and recover. And T looked good in their win last week at San Francisco. So you've got Jamar having a record-setting type year. You've got T getting healthier. You've got the always reliable Tyler Boyd, who has touchdown catches in each of the last 2 weeks. And add another name to the list. They've got a rookie out of Princeton who is a late draft pick named Andre Yosivas. He was a world-class heptathlete at Princeton. So he's a big, strong, incredible athlete. He has touchdown catches in each of the last 2 weeks. So Joe Burrow has a lot of weapons at his disposal. Joe Mixon had a great game last week. About the only area on offense where the Bengals don't have a great weapon is tight end. That's really the one weakness in the offense. But when you've got 3 or 4 excellent receivers and a great running back, you probably aren't going to be featuring the tight end very much anyway.
How's the offensive line? I mean, through the years, it seems like that has been a Bengals issue. And you were talking about, when Burrow couldn't move. How's the line play been for the Bengals?
This is the best offensive line that Joe Burrow has had in Cincinnati. It's still not one of the best in the NFL, but it's top half of the league, maybe top third of the league, and they've done a lot to try to fix it. The problem that the Bengals have is that in each of the last 2 years, as they've made it to the playoffs, the AFC Championship game both times, and the Super Bowl 2 years ago, they've been battered by injuries on the offensive line late in the year. They're hoping they can get through a season where they don't lose 2 or 3 starters late in the season. If you remember that Buffalo playoff game last year in the snow, they had 3 backups starting on the offensive line in that game, and the offensive line played well. So they went out this offseason. They added the best free agent offensive lineman available in left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler. They signed 3 free agents the year before to address the offensive line. So they've done a lot to try to fix it. I do think it's the best offensive line that Joe Burrow has had, even if it's not, top 5 or top 10 in the NFL.
Yeah, they remember that playoff game in Buffalo. It gets brought up a lot. What was that week like for the Bengals leading into that game? And I've heard Zach Taylor reference it the other day when he was talking about the way this team gets inspired to play. How big of a game was that for them, not just advancing in the playoffs, but going to a place like Buffalo and beating them and ending that season?
Well, it was huge. Prior to 2021, which was the year that the Bengals went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Rams, they had never won a road playoff game in franchise history. The team's been in business for more than 50 years. In 2021, they went to Tennessee and won. That was their first ever road playoff win. They went to Kansas City and won the AFC Championship game to go to the Super Bowl. Last year, they went to Buffalo in the snow, where visiting teams never win, and won. So that was a big deal for the Bengals. And you might remember they had a little extra motivation in that game last year because of the NFL's ruling after the Damar Hamlin game that if Buffalo and Kansas City met in the AFC Championship game, it would be on a neutral field, but the Bengals were not extended that same opportunity, and they felt that that was an unfair decision. So they had that little bit of extra chip on their shoulder. Did it make a big difference? Who knows? I don't think the Bengals could have played much better than they did in that game. But, all of those little things probably contributed.
Let's talk about the coach, Zach Taylor, because I brought it up, the fact that he mentioned that the Niners had won 11 in a row. And he mentions that the Bills had their only second ever home playoff loss since they've been in the NFL. And he's open about that. I mean, a lot of coaches, the way they are, they wouldn't even mention it. They certainly wouldn't be mentioning what they did to the Bills in that way leading into the game. That's who he is, right?
I think every good coach tries to find ways to motivate his team, and Zach Taylor and his staff look for little things that might make a difference. They had a big theme last year. About midway through the season, there was kind of a storyline going around in the NFL that the Bengals were about to face this gauntlet of teams. It was going to be the toughest schedule down the stretch of any team in the NFL, and they adopted the motto, "They've got to play us," as opposed to "we have to play all these tough teams. They've got to play us." So he's always looking for things like that. We generally don't find out what those things are until after the fact. So, for example, last week, they were the first team to beat the 49ers on their home field in 12 games. That didn't come out until we saw the game ball presentation video that you see now on every team's website. And it was similar with Buffalo last year. So he's good at finding things like that. I imagine he's got something this week, but we might not know what it is until the post-game locker room and the Bengals, if the Bengals win the game.
It's pretty easy when you think of the Bengals. You start right with the quarterback and you talk about the offense. But it's this defense has always been well coached. Lou has done a phenomenal job with that defense, but they're starting to turn people over a ton. Has that been, while you're getting Burrow healthy, when you're getting, if I'm looking at it right, 3 turnovers, 2 turnovers, 3 turnovers, this is what you're doing. I mean, that changes the entire game, right?
It does. And the defense has been unbelievable in the red zone in particular. So 2 games ago, when they beat Seattle at Paycor Stadium, the offense really wasn't very good. They scored on their first 2 drives, didn't cross the 50-yard line for the rest of the game. So it was like somebody turned off the faucet and the offense was dry. Seattle kept getting into the red zone time and time and time again. They got into the red zone 4 times, actually inside the 10-yard line 4 times in the second half, and didn't score a touchdown, and didn't score at all on 3 of those 4 drives inside the 10. So this defense seems to have a knack when the field shrinks and you're in those confined spaces of getting stops or getting takeaways. And that's the difference. When you're playing great teams and you get, one key takeaway like that, they had one last week. The 49ers had it 1st and goal at the 8, and the Bengals got an interception. When you get takeaways like that, that's often the recipe for beating other good teams.
I don't see linebackers with as many picks as Logan Wilson is. He is, what does he have now? I mean, or at least
10 in his career. Yeah, 10 in 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about playmakers. It used to be a bigger deal, I thought, at the linebacker position. You see more now, usually in the secondary, obviously, where the guys are getting. And you got, who was it? Hendrickson, too, with, I think he leads the team in 8 sacks. How good is this defense right now?
It's really good. It's been good. In their playoff runs over the last couple of years, the defense has really played better than the offense. Obviously, Burrow and Chase get the headlines, but the defense has been incredible in their postseason runs. It's an interesting defense because it only has 1 Pro Bowler. Trey Hendrickson's the only guy that's made a Pro Bowl. Now, that could change. Logan Wilson deserves to be a Pro Bowler. I think members of their secondary probably will be Pro Bowlers down the road. It's a young secondary. But one of the strengths of the defense is just how flexible they are, kind of a positionless group. So frequently the Bengals will play 5 defensive linemen together. And basically the ends, Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, become linebackers. They will stand up on the edge of a 5 defensive line defense so that you have 3 big defensive tackle types in the middle to stop the run. And then these 2 great pass rushers on the edge, but they're flexible enough that they can drop in coverage and give the offense of the other team difficult looks. The linebackers, Wilson and Pratt, are both former college defensive backs who grew into becoming linebackers, and that helps explain why they're so good in pass coverage. And they don't have to come off the field. There are a lot of teams where you've got run-stopping linebackers in on 1st and 2nd down, pass defending linebackers in on 3rd down or 3rd and long. The Bengals don't have to do that because Wilson and Pratt are really good in coverage.
It's amazing how that linebacker position changes that way. I mean, with the Bills, they're missing Matt Milano. You don't replace that guy. But all of a sudden last week, they've got, Jordan Poyer playing almost like a linebacker role with the 3 safeties on the field because it's just the game itself has evolved in that way. And you see players being able to adapt that way. In Cincinnati, what's your impression of the way I'll start with the Bengals organization looks at the Bills? Because I got to tell you, as much as the Bills have faced the Chiefs and the Chiefs had been their nemesis, I think it crushed them that the Bengals beat them last year because they looked at the Chiefs of it's Mahomes, it's Andy Reid and all this. And the Bengals were, different, maybe on an equal footing. And then they come in and knock them off. Do you think the Bengals' perception of the Bills is?
I think the Bengals look at the Chiefs themselves and the Bills as the 3 teams to beat in the AFC. Now, Baltimore may be edging its way into that conversation. Maybe the Dolphins as well, although the Bills certainly made them look mortal several weeks ago. But I think for the last couple of years, that's been the clear trio at the top of the AFC. And I think, the Bengals have the utmost respect for Buffalo, even though they were pretty dominant in that playoff game last year in Orchard Park. So by no means do the Bengals think that they have some sort of upper hand over Buffalo. I think they think that any team that features Josh Allen is going to be one of the toughest teams to beat in the league.
Yeah, and the Josh Allen Burrow thing to me hasn't really taken off yet. I mean, Burrow and Mahomes have had those games, and Allen and Mahomes have had those games. And, we didn't get the first one in Cincinnati. And then honestly, the Bengals took Allen and the entire team out of it in the second game, and it really was nothing. But you kind of looking forward to seeing a Burrow and Allen back and forth game?
Well, as the voice of the Bengals, I wouldn't mind another lopsided Cincinnati win, but I don't think I'm going to have that to look forward to on Sunday night. I do expect it to be a great Burrow Allen thing. That's been the thing between the Bengals and Chiefs and the Bills and Chiefs. All of those meetings have been incredible shootouts. The Bengals played the Chiefs 4 times in the last 2 seasons, 3 times in 2021, once last year. No, I take that back. Twice last year. So it was twice the year before and twice last year. All 4 games were decided by 3 points, including 2 AFC championship games. And one of those games went to overtime. So they've been incredibly tight, dramatic games. And from growing up in Western New York and watching Buffalo, Kansas City games with a Bills interest in my heart, I know how dramatic those games have been. So, yeah, you're right. We haven't had that yet between Burrow and Allen, but it's going to happen at some point, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's Sunday night.
All right. I love these kind of games. I think the Bengals, their history is similar to the Bills in a lot of ways in terms of where, the success kind of went away for a while. Obviously, these teams met, in the AFC Championship back when the Bills' first run was going through. But I guess their slow start this year, and they've done that before. Has this Bengals team, earned the? This is a hard word to use with fan bases. Have they earned the patience of the fan base? Like, were they just saying, "Get Joe back, get him healthy, and they'll be fine," or was there any concern up to this point?
Fans aren't patient. I don't think those 2 words ever go together, especially when you have high expectations. So when the team started 0-2, naturally, nobody was calling for Zach Taylor to be fired, or maybe a few people were, but nobody sane was calling for Zach Taylor to be fired. But he was taking all sorts of criticism for the way that they perceived he prepared during training camp. He never plays his starters in the preseason. He's one of those coaches. So they've started 0-2 each of the last 2 years. Joe Burrow has not been able to take part in training camp. That's been the big problem. But a lot of people have blamed it on the fact that they're not playing their starters in the preseason. Then they win a few games and everything's fine. So they weren't patient in a 1-3 start, but now everybody's back on the bandwagon, proclaiming the Bengals as the best team in the NFL, and they've got 10 to go. So we'll see.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time and great insight into this. You're a busy man. I mean, your schedule's got to be, you got the Bearcats, you got this. What else you got going on? You're going to take over the Reds? You're going to run for mayor of Cincinnati? Like, what else you got going on?
Well, you may recall that the mayor of Cincinnati taunted Patrick Mahomes prior to the AFC Championship game last year. Yeah. So anybody that wants to run for mayor of Cincinnati might have a chance of beating Aftab Puraval. College basketball starts on Monday, so that's when it really gets fun for me. I'll have a college football game to broadcast on Saturday, the Bengals and Bills on Sunday night, and then the college basketball opener on Monday night. So this is the best time of my year. I love it. Very lucky to be able to do what I do. And my teams have been good in recent years, so that makes it that much better.
Well, you do a fantastic job. We hear your broadcast. We hear your color guy jump in all the time. You guys have an entertaining broadcast. Now, it was your basketball analyst who got kicked out of a game, right? Dave has never gotten kicked out of a game, has he?
Yeah, it's hard to kick out the football analyst since he's in the booth and
That's
officials
true.
are not hearing what he says. But yes, the late, great Chuck Mayshock, who used to be my color commentator for University of Cincinnati basketball games, is the only broadcaster to get kicked out of an NCAA tournament game for yelling at the refs. It happened in 2003 in Salt Lake City, Cincinnati versus Gonzaga. I did the last 16 minutes alone because they put a police officer on either side of him, literally lifted him out of his chair, walked him out of the arena, and I went solo for 16 minutes.
Wow. You working on the book for the career?
If I do, that's chapter 1.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Dan, thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you out in Cincinnati. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere, great game. Bills and Bengals, maybe the first of 2 matchups this year.
I love it. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
All right. And thanks for all of you for being with us. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel presented by Connors and Ferris.